Another day, another morning in the courtyard of Wesley's chapel for morning devotions. This day we started out with Proverbs 31 and considered the ideal of a woman. We remembered the role that Susanna Wesley played in raising her sons and developing them in the faith and educationally so that they could listen to God's call in their lives and reach out into the world in new ways. Susanna Wesley was involved in the Methodist movement all the way through, and she was eventually buried here at Bun Hill Cemetery, which is across the street from Wesley's chapel. This was a cemetery that was outside the walls of London because it was a nonconformist cemetery. It was for the people who did not conform to the beliefs and practices of the Church of England. So they were not allowed to be buried in the consecrated ground of the Anglican Church. And so Susanna was here where she could continue to watch over the Methodist movement. And today we are going to focus on John Wesley. Here's the guy himself standing in his courtyard. His home is still next to this courtyard. It was built for him to live in while he was continuing his ministry in the final years of his life, and he passed away in this home. There are other Methodists buried in this courtyard as well, but here are his preaching robes, the kitchen where his servants prepared his food for him when he was there or for people who were visiting and staying with him. We got a lovely tour where we got to see his study, including some of the medical devices that he supported, like electroshock therapy. He believed the physical needs were as important as spiritual needs, and he wanted to make sure people were healthy all around. There were guest bedrooms for visiting preachers to stay in, and here is Wesley's own room. It had his own private study off to the side where he would be up at 4 a.m. every morning praying, and then he encouraged all of his, well, perhaps required all of his preachers to be up at 5 for morning prayer as well. The courtyard is quite large because, again, as a nonconformist church, the Methodists were not allowed to build their church right on the street. So to this day, we have a beautiful courtyard in front of the chapel. This is the pulpit that was built for John Wesley. Originally, it was a little taller. It had a few more pieces to it, but he did preach regularly. He was the superintendent of this chapel for a couple of years. It is still a lively congregation with people from all around the world, not only visiting, but attending here, especially a number of the immigrants who've come in from areas of the Commonwealth continue to worship here and make this their congregation. The walls are filled with memorials for people who've passed away or gifts that have been given by different groups, including the U.S. Council of Bishops, to support the ministries. In the rear garden is this grave for John Wesley, and tomorrow we will spend time here to remember John Wesley as part of the John Wesley Day pilgrimage. But for now, we get to walk around the garden and remember John Wesley's life. And they have planted a number of the plants that John Wesley recommended as part of a healthy life. In the basement of the chapel is an extensive museum for Methodism around the world. And they have some old plumbing that is still in use in the church. Most notably, it is fun to see that the company that made this was called Crappers. After the tour, we hit the streets again. Some of us had been to St. Bride's Church on Saturday, but there was a wedding going on there, so not everyone made it. So some of us went over this afternoon, and St. Bride's is very close to St. Paul's Cathedral. Both of them were destroyed in the Great Fire of 1666, and both were rebuilt by Christopher Wren's designs. Being in the heart of the Fleet Street area, St. Bride's became integral to the publishing industry and is supported by many of the newspapers and publishers in the area. But after the bombing of the Germans in World War II, a number of discoveries were made underneath the church of Roman roads from the 2nd century and of Anglo-Saxon church buildings and medieval church buildings, including a beautiful prayer chapel. And The first printing press was brought into this area, and so that is why the church has always been connected. One of its ministries now is to continue to remember and pray for journalists who are missing or imprisoned in different parts of the world, with prayer vigils